Yo. Thanks to everyone that made it through the traffic jam or whatever it was. And here we are. Thank you for coming. And we're tackling the most impossible question of how we do what we do. After doing it for so long, almost 30 years, I started my practice of music at the age of 5. I'm now turning 35. So that's a long time to do something pretty much every day. And so, in a practice that has become so second nature, to be asked this question is actually quite daunting, to be honest, without, of course, dismissing it as, it just happens, which in a lot of the time it does just happen, but we're going to try and dissect it in some kind of way, including some audience participation. But don't run away, not in an evasive way, in what I'm hoping will be an enjoyable way, especially for even the non-musician to see how we can take just the germ of an idea that we can all collectively make together, and how I can expand on that as an improviser and as a composer, and creating in the moment, on the spot, instantaneous composition. So first, we're going to just make sure that I can actually play the piano. So I'm going to play a little bit, and then we're going to open up and we're going to try this experiment, which I will tell you a little bit more about in a few minutes. I'd like to thank the center, as always, for having me. It's always such a pleasure. I think I started working here 4 or 5 years ago. And it's been a wonderful collaboration since, and ongoing with all the various practitioners at the center. And of course with Mr. Kentridge, with the opera that we created together that's now traveling the world. So I have a wonderful connection with this place and everything it stands for, so I'm so happy to be here, so thank you for that. And let me stop talking for now and let the music speak a little bit. So thank you for coming, and here we go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So what I was playing there was a real sort of mixture and medley of some of my compositions with a lot of improvisation, at least 60 or 70% improvisation. And it's, as an improvising musician, I like to springboard off of some kind of scaffolding, as we've been calling it this last few days, some kind of musical scaffolding from which to sort of stabilize this kind of music that I'm trying to construct in what was 25 minutes or so. And often in a concert, especially in concert halls and so on, these explorations can go on for much longer, usually for a set of 1 hour, 45 minutes to 1 hour. And really, especially when playing solo, I really can dive into what I'm doing and really take time to flesh out these ideas in a very sort of unencumbered way. When I play with a band, which I do quite often with a trio with double bass and drums, that's two other people to consider. So the parameters and framework within which I have to work, of course, has to be a lot more controlled because everybody needs to feel part of that music. But what we're really excited about is trying to demonstrate to you what this very beginning moments of a composition or an improvisation can be. And I wanted to really break down let's say, a piece of music into its fundamental parts. You have a melody, you of course have a harmony that accompanies that melody, and then you have rhythm that in every way frames those two elements. And then of course at the end of it you have form meaning, an established theme, some variation of that theme, and then a revisiting of that theme at the end of a form, And this is a very sort of basic way of explaining it. Sometimes we play music without form, sometimes we play music that's atonal, so without harmony, or arrhythmic without rhythm, or amelodic without melody. But that's for the next few years in our house sessions. But today we're going to really sort of break it down. And I wanted to ask you if you would be so kind to help me with some of this material. So I'm not sure who are the musicians, who's not the musicians, but I think we all know that in music we have the chromatic scale from C to C, and that's the notes that every musician in the history of the world has been dealing with and been trying to make as much music and as much beauty using these same, I sometimes call it goddamn notes, because we're so stuck with these notes, and we have to make it all happen with just these ingredients. But it's what we've got, and we have to, we have to make the best of it. So I wanted to ask, in a very random way, if anyone is willing to participate, and in a very loose, feel comfortable. If you want to shout out some notes to me, I want to put together a little tray of ingredients that I can work with to improvise and make a piece of music out of. But I say what I actually mean is us make a piece of music. So in some way, with this, I'm hoping it's going to happen in a moment. This is all in theory, all while in theory. I'm going to just ask if anyone, you can C, G sharp, G flat, E, whatever. I want to get a set of 6 notes. Let's say 6 to 8 notes. I want to write them down, and I want to organize them in what I think can be a melody. And you'll really see me, firstly, and also hear me fighting with those 6 notes to try and make something that we all like, not just me. We all like. Then I'm going to go forward and add harmony to it. I'm going to ask you what you feel about that harmony. Should we brighten up that harmony? Should we darken that harmony? Do we want that harmony more edgy? How are we feeling? We're composing now. So this is what I do every single day of my life as a composer for for my film score projects or my series projects, really challenging projects where I'm writing 30, 35 pieces of music a week. Of course, this has all become second nature, but this is what I'm grappling with every single day. You know, what harmony is going with the melody? Is the melody, firstly, any good? Are we going to keep that melody? Those are all, keeps you up at night kind of stuff as a composer. So I want to give you some insight into that. We'll add harmony to it. We'll change that harmony. We'll change it until the point that we think it's working. Then we'll add the rhythmic element. Do we want it to be rhythmic? Do we want it to groove in a whatever kind of groove we want? Then we might add form to it if we get that far. If the melody itself even works, we don't know. This is a thought experiment. So if you will, please afford me the opportunity of your musical input. And don't feel shy. We're just gonna, I don't know, what's the first note that comes to anyone's mind? Shout it out, speak it. A flat. A flat, all right. Of course, the saxophone player in the house. All right, thank you for breaking the ice there. Okay, we're gonna need more than that. E. All right. I like where that's going. F sharp, woo! Of course, you will throw us the curveball. Anyone, any more? Let's say we need 6, minimum. C natural. Aha. Another curveball, thank you. Come on, 2 more. Feel free.
G major 7.
I'm gonna go G, because we're just asking for notes. Okay, 1, 2. One more. Let's take one more. Make it a good one. Make it a good one. Come on, Jonathan. I can see there's something on the tip of your tongue.
E flat.
E flat. All right. Brett. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we got A flat. We got E. We got F sharp. About to get interesting. We got C. G. And E flat. I like that. Let me see what we can do. So. A flat, E, F sharp, C, G, E flat. Right, let's add some harmony to that. A little bit all over the place, so let's take it back. Like that. Take it somewhere else. Repeat. I think I like this one.
A flat, E, F sharp, C, G, A flat, C, G, A flat, F sharp, C, G, A flat, E, C, A flat, G, E flat,
We got an okay melody. We got an okay melody. So what I, thank you. So really, this is a lot of the how has to do with starting with some sort of inspiration. Sometimes it's a set of chords, or sometimes it's a melody. In this case, we took some melodic notes, but I also used the letter names A flat, E, F sharp as the root notes for chords, you know. So, we went A flat, E, F sharp, C, G, E flat. And so it's this very sort of this exercise of taking these little ideas, these little melodies, flipping them on its head, using all your harmonic knowledge or melodic knowledge, and really just moving it around like little pieces of a puzzle. And eventually, I find just by the act of playing and playing and playing just endlessly, one maybe, if you're lucky, find something that resonates with you as a piece of music that you want to recreate or repeat. I think that's where the value is. So, your fingers can land in certain places and it can work for the moment, but you really have this sort of light bulb moment in the playing when you want to repeat what you just did, and you know in that moment that it's worth diving into it, to dissect it, sometimes to write it down, to commit it to memory, to grow it, to expand on it, in order to repeat it, in order for it to land on other ears and not just you in your studio, whatever. And this is just a small insight into the how. I mean, it comes with there's a lot more hair pulling involved than I'm letting on, But I think my simple answer to the how of what we do is just simply in the doing of it, I really do feel that music gets its life when you make it. One can theorize about it, really blue in the face, as people do, and all power to them and respect to them. But there's something pivotal and vital in terms of energy in the real making of it and grappling with your instrument, grappling with all the knowledge that you have, trying your best not to sound like a broken record and repeating yourself every time you get on the stage. This is all the inner war a musician fights every time they walk onto a stage. To not repeat yourself, but to also repeat all the good stuff you want to repeat, bad stuff you don't want to repeat. You want to play a concert in New York and the next day in Paris, and you want to surprise yourself. But after doing this for 30 years, it's impossible to escape yourself. But this is the grapple that goes on every day in the practice. And also our body is always fighting against us because we have this thing called muscle memory. So your hands just, if I were to close my eyes, walk up the stage and sit down and put my hands, it's inevitably going to land on something that it's accustomed to doing. Unfortunately, we conditioned by this thing, our machine. And more than that, every musician will tell you that that's it. That is simply it. It's a simple case of making sure you deal with your instrument, the mechanics, you deal with the theory, you deal with all the circumstances that music can throw at you. Then it's about going in there, diving in there, having the courage firstly to go into music, the courage to make all the mistakes, even on stage, the courage to try something new, even to fight against your muscle memory is the biggest challenge often. Fighting against your muscle memory, fighting against repetition, but also split-second decision-making where you know something's worth repeating for an audience. And so this impossible question of how is still completely unanswered, I know that. But this is a little bit into my process because I've written so much music, well into the hundreds, 200s pieces of music. One sort of has to, one wonders, where's the next thing? Where's the next thing? So asking you to give me these notes, that's kind of whether it's good or bad, we'll decide that later. That was one way to give you an insight to my sort of process and practice when I'm by myself. When I'm by myself in the studio composing, that act of receiving notes and receiving melodies, that's happening, of course, within me, a dialogue in my own mind. And it's almost like there's two voices within you that you're working with. And that's actually all I can say about it. There's something about, especially as a pianist, saxophone player, when you become certain, when you reach a certain proficiency on your instrument, there's also something about just letting your hands land on some keys. Letting your hands land on something as a start. I do this almost every day as an experiment. So really just landing. you know. And then there's this wonderful phenomenon, of course, hearing other people's music. That's another thing. Last night I was at the dinner and we heard beautiful Oliver Mtukudzi music, you know. And so I immediately get an inspiration and be able to, quickly analyze what you just heard and you interpret it, you know. Or whatever. I used to listen to my teacher Zim play this wonderful tune and it would ring in my head and sit down and play it and reinterpret it, you know. So again, this wonderful phenomenon of this beautiful fact that there are other wonderful musicians in the world that will give you so much material, you know. Copy them, that's fine. I copied a lot of people, and you change it a little bit. You hear pianists, you hear all the greats, you take what they can do, you really study it, and then you change it. So you don't get on the stage and let everyone have your secrets. Oh, he's checked out or copied this one. You interpret it, and you have fun with it, you know. And that's this ongoing process, hearing pop music, hearing classical music. You know, your brain computes it, and then it's the act of doing again, sitting down, laying your fingers on your instrument, or whatever instrument you may play, and just working that out, just working it out, sort of half intellectually, half just a musical connection, you know. I find playing music from around South Africa inspires me a lot because if I play. I feel a connection with it because having gone to the Eastern Cape before, having had friends, mentors like Zimlawana, and wonderful colleagues that grew up in that place, the Xhosa, this is their traditional music. I feel a resonance because I have that personal connection with people from these cultures or these streets, you know. When I went to New York, you kind of realize that the sound of jazz, the sound of bebop, could not have come from anywhere else in the world but from 52nd Street in New York City. That's how it is. Same with Johannesburg. There's certain music that there's no other place in the world that this could have come from, you know. Because I'm from Cape Town, I mean. It's just, where else could that have come from? And as a eternal student of music, this is how your ears are always, and you're picking up. All the times I've toured to Japan, listening to the traditional music, going to the Kabuki theater and all these things. Totally, I mean, the Kabuki theater is 4 hours, four-hour stints in a day. It's 4 hours, 4 hours, 4 hours. This is a piece of theater. And you choose, I'll go to the middle 4 hours because you're not going to last 16 hours. And there's wonderful musicians there, the traditional Japanese. And in that 4 hours, the shamisen player said, that's all. That's all. Ping. And it blew my mind. I was, fuck, this is crazy. You know, that's insane. And of course, it was done so, that one note was done so powerfully in the right moment. The timing of it was just impeccable. And of course, as a musician, I'm there. I don't understand the theater part of it, of course, language. And of course, visually, it's absolutely fascinating. But I'm there to hear the instruments, the traditional instruments, you know. And out comes this one note after 2 hours or whatever, and it's just in this perfect moment. And it blew my mind. It made me rethink, what am I doing playing all these notes the whole time? Where's that kind of depth, you know? So this is the wonderful thing about being, I think, a composer, or I would say firstly for me, an improviser, because, you know, as Wayne Shorter said, composition is just improvisation slowed down. Improvisation and composition are absolutely the same thing at varying speeds. Improvising, you're doing it right in the moment without edit, without an opportunity to edit, because it's absolutely split-second thinking. Composition is that same process, but a lot more drawn out, because you have the opportunity to go back and change and tweak and, you know, reach some sort of level of satisfaction. So I see myself first as an improviser, taking in all these sounds, and then revisiting that, deciding if it's worth repeating to the rest of the world, let's call it that. And then formalizing, putting it into a form, putting it into a song structure. That's the process of composition. But being an improviser, I think, for me, just even as a human being, allows me, firstly, so much insight, because your ears and your mind, you know, you're out there like little satellite dishes everywhere you go in the world. Every concert you go and watch, every festival, hearing new sounds, hearing old sounds in a new way, all of that is all happening all the time. Which is why I don't often listen to music for pleasure, or leisure, sorry. Leisure is a better word. Because it's always, you know, you're working out what's going on in the melody, what's going on in the harmony, so you can't really enjoy it like other people, you know. I suppose whatever your job is, you're not really going to do that on the weekends, you know, if you don't have to. So that's it. It's about this constant taking in, trying to translate it onto your instrument. And that's what I'm doing on a daily basis. And thank you for participating with me a little bit. For better or worse, we made one melody, or little bit of a melody. And so with that, we're gonna open up for a little bit of a Q&A, if anyone has anything to ask me. And before we do so, and then we'll definitely end with some more playing. I guess that would be year to year. Okay, all right. Are we going to bring the microphone around? Yes. Okay.
Thanks a lot. As you know, I don't know how many times I've been watching you in different constellations, and I like that you keep the good parts. But it's always worth going for another show. I was wondering if you can elaborate a bit about how you work with rhythm, because you mentioned the melodies and the harmonies, but that would be very interesting to hear. And maybe...
Yes. So rhythm for me is one of the fundamental. It's one of the more challenging parts of the music process, I think, because you can play anything, but without rhythm, it's not really much, you know. In fact, we didn't even get to that part of our melodic exercise, you know, because it's actually so hard, I think. And I approach a lot of my music from the entry point of the rhythm, and having a strong rhythm. And I'm very, very fascinated with odd time signatures. So a normal time signature is 4/4, 3/4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, you know. But then there's a whole world of other time signature possibilities, which I've been for a long time exploring with my trio or solo. And I find it offers a wonderful challenge, firstly. Because of course it's easy to feel something in 4/4, 3/4. Of course, we're so conditioned by Western music, which is very much very compound, you know, But if you go to the rest of the world of music, firstly, right here on our wonderful continent, sometimes I wonder why we even look outside of this continent for our music study. There's so much going on here. Right in our own country, we don't even have to go that far. Let's, we're not going to go into that sort of discussion now. But for whatever reason, we all grew up playing Western music, and so we became very conditioned with 4/4 and 3/4. We even walk in 3/4. You can leave tonight and you can figure. Abdullah Ibrahim told me we walk in 3/4, and I went out and I just walked home and I was like, oh, this is 3/4. Yeah, he told me, oh, no, we walk in 3/4. Okay, blew my mind. It's true. Go and check it out. But that's how we feel things because we're so used to that. But if you go again, as I said, on our continent, and you go especially east, even Eastern Europe, and further down Asia, the time signatures are completely blown into many, many interesting iterations of these. So it's been a fascination for me. And it's something, especially when I'm playing in a jazz context, especially with my trio, it's something that we're still experimenting with, making 11/8, 13/8, or 7/4, 7/8 feel like 4/4. That's the key. That is the key. I played with and recorded with a wonderful musician, Lionel Leweke from Benin. He's the regular guitarist for Herbie Hancock, has recorded with Wayne Short, Terence Blanchard, Sting, all these wonderful musicians. And we were in Germany, and I was curating. I was the band leader. I say it like that. Because, of course, he's just a hero, and we managed to get it together to invite him to join us on tour in Germany. And we were exploring all these very challenging time signatures. And he walked in and, plugged his guitar in, and as if it was just a lazy Sunday afternoon, played these crazy, challenging time signatures like it was just nothing, And then I spoke to him about it, and he really walked me through how he grew up in Benin, West Africa. For him, these rhythms are like second nature. It's like 4/4 for us. He could even explain some of my own music back to me. This is what's actually going on in the rhythmic part of your piece. And it's something that's still on my bucket list, so to speak, to really change that conditioning. It's very difficult to do that because, as I said, 30 years starting with classical music on the violin, which is my first instrument actually. Then coming into jazz, but also American jazz, which again is 4/4 and 3/4, generally, if you're going back to sort of bebop. And then, of course, time signatures were explored a bit later. So that's my take on it, on time. Yes.
Hello. Hi, Kyle. I'm curious. The first time I saw you here, you had done something very interesting with archive and responding to archive and making use of a loop, some sort of loop.
Yeah.
It actually inspired us to make a play called Commission Continua a year or two afterwards. Somebody who's musically deficient. In that moment, there was something very interesting about the relationship that you were responding to and conjuring in your conversation with the archive. I'm just curious if you've carried on that work or where you are in that kind of scope and thinking.
So that work, I was invited, actually that was my first experience here at the center, and with all the wonderful people that work here, and like yourselves, some other people in the audience. And I was commissioned, of course, for season 4 of at the center, and the brief of the commission was very open. Come and perform something, and I took that as a great opportunity and challenge to try something that I would not normally. So it's always been on my mind to deconstruct this concertizing thing. So having played, in my life, I've played in Carnegie Hall in New York, to Suntory Hall in Japan, to Bouffes-Tournai in Paris. I've done all of that and concertized just piano and played song forms, songs, nice sounding stuff. Has a great place in the world, but I took the invitation from the center to try something different. Different for me. I'm not saying new, whatever. I don't make that kind of claims. But I was also at the same time really getting into electronics and also really getting into, I had just completed my master's degree where I had to really go and research those archival things, those sound bites. So and it took some digging, I won't lie, to found sound bites of Zim Awana talking at Stellenbosch, Louis Moholo, Yuma Sekela talking in the 80s about his practice. Who else did we? I had a number of, So I thought it's just the time of my life was kind of perfect for me to try that experiment. One, this new interest in electronics, so the sampling and the looping. And then two, having just completed a study where I had to uncover this archive anyway. So I had all these sound bites. And it's something that I've explored quite a lot with Mr. Kentridge. We, besides the Waiting for the Sybil opera that we've written, I've also performed duo with him where he's reading his poetry and of course his visuals are being projected. But we've always been fascinated by this idea of can the piano translate what the poem is saying, So in a very whimsical way, he would recite and I would respond or translate in a sonic way. Again, for better or worse, that's not the question. It's in the act of doing. And we've done it a number of times. And so that was the idea with using the archival samples. Can I translate the meaning of what they're saying? Firstly, my interpretation of the meaning of what they're saying, how it resonates with me, what it means to me. Can I translate that into music, But not in a way where I'm pressing play on a backtrack and I'm just accompanying this backtrack. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to really have a conversation with a piece of archival audio, I hope I'm explaining. It's like a speech, like a talk somebody gave many years ago, And I felt that we did it. I did that, and in fact, that was also one of the reasons that we went on to write, to compose, and put together Waiting for the Sybil, the chamber opera, Williams chamber opera, was ideas from that evening, along with Mklangu, and bringing our two worlds together musically, and tying it in with the wonderful visual world, of course. So I would say my follow-on from that evening, which what was my piece called? Voices. It was a 60-minute piece. It was called Voices. I would say the follow-on from that for myself personally was actually this chamber opera, Waiting for the Sybil. Because there are elements in there, although I'm not using samples and I'm not using electronics, there are elements of some of the ideas that we're using in the piece. And if you know anything about Mr. Kentridge and his way of working, it's an ever-evolving, so last year we were of course stunted quite badly by COVID. We were meant to be on the road a lot longer, but we managed to do 3 tours, Luxembourg, Greece, and Stockholm. And every time we would perform or do a string of performances, the piece grows. The piece evolves through much discussion, through much frustration sometimes with one another or with the work, much grappling. That piece grows. So to answer your question, I think that idea continues to expand. And I kind of, it's in the back of my mind to perhaps after another few years to maybe re-explore the solo, playing solo within that context. Maybe with my current experiences now with the opera, perhaps this idea is more solidified then, because it was very experimental at first, I think. So yes, I hope I can hear or see what you went on to do. Okay, and then I'll have a look. Yeah. Yes.
I'm just going to slip this off. Is that okay? So I'm deeply concerned about speaking in front of real musicians because I listen to a lot of vinyl, but I am musically ignorant. So that's where I come from, just so you know. But I'm really interested in the idea of light and darkness in your music, which I hear a lot. And as a person spending a lot of time on rooftops at night with very long exposures, I like this idea of stretching time and how the notes that you play trigger in my head, because I do not have the knowledge that people here have, but it evokes particular moods, like, when your hands go in there, and I kind of feel like I'm in Central Africa, and then other times I feel like it reminds me of those guys like Stockhausen who do crazy stuff. And so just from an ignorant point of view, I'm really interested in what it does in our heads.
Sure. Okay, I don't think there's any ignorant point of view when it comes to music. One of the great jazz pianists, Bill Evans, used to say that he often listens to what the so-called lay person has to say about the music. Because you're not conditioned by all of the BS. Let's start there. You're not conditioned by any of it. You're not conditioned by your study or your degrees or how clever you think you are musically. And I get this all the time from other musicians and even myself sometimes. And it's all nonsense because the music, what you feel when you hear the music, in that moment, unencumbered by anything, that is what music is about. That is it, in that moment. Right? We can then intellectualize it till we absolutely blue in our face, but in the moment, that's what it's about, that connection, vibrations flying through the room, everyone's receiving it in their own complete way. That's the beauty of concertizing. This is why streaming concerts did not sit well with my soul at all. I think I only did one in the hard lockdown, and that was I really had to be convinced to do that, because I just felt it so strange, me sitting here, everyone's sitting in front of a screen, and this huge gulf. And that's not, human beings, I think, have always been drawn to music because it's a communal act, simply. Even this is uncomfortable, me sitting up here, you sitting there, you paying. Unfortunately, we have to make a living, so we have to do that. But you know what I'm saying. So that's not answering your question, but I just want to quickly qualify what I think about what you're saying about ignorant views or non-informed views. There's none of that. I think music is one of those beautiful things where our feeling takes precedent, Unlike other studies in the world, like medicine, there's no opinion there. It's, that's black and white things. But here we have this thing where you can be completely emotionally moved or not moved. Simple, And to go back to your actual question, so I'm always thinking of a set of music. Let's say I've always played in this kind of what they call long form way, where I don't really like to play one song stop, one song stop, one song stop, clap, one song, with a band different, but solo I like to play in a longer way, in a more narrative way, I think. Because from start to finish, we have to go on this journey. And that's a cliched way of describing it, but it is a journey. We got to start somewhere and we got to end up somewhere, and we got to be happy about ending up where we end up. So everything that happens in between has really got to be a conscious thing. Consciously creating light, consciously creating dark, and playing with those contrasts. As you would know as a photographer, that's key, playing with contrast. So I'm always thinking about that in my music and in my playing. And that has actually served me in a way quite well, because I've since really become almost 60% of what I'm doing now, whether I like it or not all the time, is writing music for picture. And when I got my first job doing that, I very reluctantly accepted it. Because firstly, I just didn't know anything about that world. All I was interested in is traveling around the world and playing the piano. So when the director, Darren Joshua, approached me, I really thought, don't think I'm the right person to do this. But he really called me almost every day for 3 months. He had heard something in even my jazz music. There was an album I did called The Portrait of Home. And he heard something in this album that he explained as very strong narrative arcs, you know. And he felt that could work well with picture, because that's exactly what you're doing when you're making a movie, you know. You're creating narrative arcs, so each character has and then of course the overarching idea, and you're creating this, if it's good, I guess. Sometimes you get duds land on your desk and you kind of have to do it too, but if you get the rare opportunity to work on something good, which is absolute war, like to create a good film is absolute war, you know. It's not an easy thing. To create good music is absolute war. It's not an easy thing. You're grappling with it every day. So now, of course, after so many years of doing it, these ideas have become subconscious, you know. So the direction that the music takes is in the moment is naturally taking on these narrative swerves, curves, you know. But that in itself has come from a practice, you know, over years, and over years of sitting down and performing, over years of watching other musicians do it. When I was in my teenage years, I would watch Abdullah Ibrahim play solo piano concerts every weekend at the Warehouse in Greenpoint in Cape Town for like 4 months. That's a lot of concerts. It was 12 concerts a month or whatever, 16, 3 months. And really, I was fascinated by how he takes you for 90 minutes on this complete journey, you know, and how I felt contrasting feelings throughout that performance. How it made me, at once takes you to the really deep, dark parts of your soul and your psyche, and then to this other very, very jubilant side, you know, where he's playing music of my culture and traditions in Cape Town, and how that's just resonating with my soul, and everything in between that, you know. So it's always been a fascination, you know? And so if you hear that in my music, it's for that reason. You know?
So, Kyle, if you're getting tired, it's also
No,
fine
it's
to be. So it's wonderful to hear you reflect on your practice. And I want to ask this in the most condensed way I can, and that is, when you were improvising in the beginning, I was struck by, in a lot of what you've said, there's a complete unity between sending and receiving. And I think this is distinctive about being an improvising musician specifically. And there were moments I was wondering if you were singing with your playing or playing with your singing, right? How much of the idea comes from a place that gets realized manually, a kind of manual vocality, if I can put it that way, and how much is the reverse? And it seems to me that both are happening and that there's flux, but that's really special.
I have a simple answer, I think, to answer. If I had a good voice, I would be a singer. Because I think singing is the most natural music you can make. You immediately have no phrasing problems if you're a singer. Because you have to breathe, if you're a human being. Your lungs can only do what they can do. I'm a pianist, I can play a phrase for 10 minutes, which nobody would want to hear, but I could. My fingers can just go non-stop, you know, or a drummer can beat on his right cymbal for 15 minutes. But if you're a singer, you can only sing the most natural phrases, because you have to breathe, unfortunately. Fortunately, you have to stop. And like Miles and the greats would muse on the spaces, man, the spaces between everything. And so I'm trying constantly, especially with my right hand, to make it more like a singer would play, or like a saxophone player would play. I think in my life I've probably listened to more saxophone music, especially tenor saxophone. Being a jazz musician, the tenor saxophone is so key, and especially the players that have come through all the generations. So for me, the key one was John Coltrane, for example. And again, because there's breath involved, the phrasing is just so perfect, really. You know, that makes sense. So I think there's a simple answer. It's playing what I would have sang if I could. You know, and constantly trying to get closer to what would be sung. So when I'm writing music and I'm by myself, so I won't embarrass myself, I'm singing the melodies all the time. And so making compositional adjustments to make these melodies more singable. You know, because for me, singable means natural. I think there was first, we'll go here first. We'll take a few more questions.
Thank you for this. I'm also not a musician. We're a chatty bunch. I dance tango, which is I dance. Can I take this off?
I think so. I can't really hear.
Thank you. I dance tango, which is an improvisatory dance. And I think I was very interested, very compelled by what you were saying about trying to frustrate muscle memory and sort of break your neural pathways, your habituated pathways. In many ways, you've already answered this question, talking about the tricks, the little techniques you use. But in tango, when you dance, you have two parties and the possibility of miscommunication, which creates a lot of the beauty and novelty. And the things that become canon are initially miscommunications that get resolved. You're playing there by yourself. But when I listen to you and watch you, because the embodied experience helps me because I'm not a musician, it seems as though you are playing and in control of what you're doing, but also listening to yourself. And almost as though you're splitting yourself into two parts, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And I guess I want to know if that makes any sense to you.
Yes, it does. You're absolutely right. I think there's two persons or parts of your person happening at the same time. So the one is the player and the other one's the listener, I think. Yeah. And I'm always trying to get the listener to be a little bit stronger, you know, because the listener tells the player what to play, you know. And sometimes the player, because he's louder and more boastful and bashful, you know, the listener starts to. And so especially when I'm playing with a band, especially my trio, which is what I mostly play in, really trying to be the listener, you know, because now I've got two other musicians also playing some stuff. And it's really up to me to hear what they're doing and for the player in me to respond to that. Or sometimes I need to lead that. Sometimes I need to take the back seat in that. But it all comes from listening. Now, I've also played with, and we won't mention names, but I played with band leaders and things like that. Lots of band leaders, and played on wonderful albums in South Africa and abroad, where the listener there is very quiet. You know, the listener in some of these people are very, very quiet. And that has frustrated me as a musician playing, is why I play with very few people. Not because I don't think I'm above that or better than that, no, not at all. It's just that the act of it becomes a little bit painful when somebody's not really listening to the other players. You know, I always used to say, man, you flew me all the way here and you didn't let me say anything. Why did you, you know? And not because, not an ego thing. It's just, here's this beautiful music that you presented for me to play with you. Why wouldn't you want me to say something? I don't know. Otherwise, I can record a backtrack or something and send to you. So when I play with my trio, with Shane Cooper and Jonas Sweetman, they know, because we've been together for 14 years. So in the early days, that was established. I told them, like, you don't just come here and like just play your muscle stuff. Like, I want you to. I need you to, right? Because remember, like, if I write a piece of music, especially if a piece of music that maybe was on an album, maybe people know, so it's something that we almost have to play, And I'm happy to play it, the pieces of my music that people know. But for me, I've played it like 1,000 times. So to especially get on a tour, you got a 30 concert tour or 20, how are you going to do that every night without finding some new thing in it? So that's a band situation, but it's the same with myself. And so it's a weird kind of push and pull you got to have and this inner dialogue. And then, of course, especially when I'm alone playing in audience, there's the element of being self-conscious. Because with the band, you're kind of covered. If I have a bad night with a trio, they more likely going to really cover my ass, which is amazing. But if I'm on the road solo and I have a bad night, that's just a bad night, There's no saving that. And I've been there, terrible experiences. And so yeah, there's that inner dialogue, and much like you said, in the tango and other dances. And very much with most creative processes, I would say. I would say with every brush stroke, I'm sure there must be some. I think any artist who doesn't have that second dialogue, that second one is usually like a little bit more skeptic. He's the skeptic or she's the skeptic. Right? So the doer is like all confident. Oh, this is the best brushstroke since the beginning of brushstrokes. And then the second voice is like, let's revisit that one. So that's all happening. But of course, in a performance, that's happening in real time, like split-second decisions, And I wrote a little bit about this this act in my master's thesis. Just trying to, of course, it's not something that's easily explained, but really trying to investigate what that whole thing is. So yes, we'll take one more.
So the non-standard rhythm, do you have to start with standard before you get to non-standard, or could you take the melody and harmony that you just did with our 6 notes and immediately start non-standard?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'd love to hear that.
Oh, you're really challenging. But I mean, there's kids that grew up in Indonesia playing gamelan music that don't even know what 4/4 is. I mean, they just know this crazy. That's just like the ABCs, So absolutely. I think we, of course, for the purpose of this exercise, we simplified it, but sometimes I've written music actually where the time signature and the feel of the time signature actually I knew I wanted to write something with this feel. So I had this rhythmic feel already going before the notes came. I knew I wanted to explore a 5/4 with accents on the 2, so it starts to feel a little bit lopsided and things, and we explored those kind of pieces. So again, when you've written so many pieces of music, you want to challenge yourself with some. Let me try exploring 13/8 or even play a jazz standard in 13 or 7 or 11, kind of thing. I'm gonna let Jonathan. This will be the last one.
Sorry, thank you very much. I just wanted to know, during performance, I'm thinking trio particularly and second set, when you've bonded with the audience and it feels like everybody's one.
Yes.
And do you get into a place where it's no longer deliberate and conscious and you're floating free and transcendental and going completely on instinct and not even really conscious of what's going on? Or is there always a thread of deliberation and what you've learned and what you've composed informing the work?
It's a little bit of both. So when I was younger, I was a lot more like wild man dancing, and it was such an everything was such a full embodiment that often the physical animation became so a little bit crazy when I was 21 or 2. Because everything that we were doing became so transcendental in a way, But I quickly, after doing so many concerts and performances, I quickly realized also the shortcomings of having that approach completely. Because again, when you have to get on the road and do it 20 nights after one another, being really, really physically animated on your instrument and standing up and crouching down and, you know, and your neck really sort of going in this, that's not sustainable. You know, it's wonderful when it happens, but try do that 20 nights in a row. You know, maybe when you're 20 you can, but yeah, I quickly, I was like, no, not enough. Then I knew I had to develop the other side also, to have that in the back pocket, you know. So like you're saying, I know you've been to so many of our trio concerts, and the way I construct the second set especially, depending on where we're playing, geographically, to who we are playing, I know, for example, sometimes in Johannesburg, when I play here, there are certain tunes of mine that people know. So I know that second set especially, everything that we're doing from the beginning of that set to the end is leading up to that moment. Because that's a wonderful moment of release for everyone, for me too. To play something that I know everyone's really engaged in, know the piece. You know, that's a nice feeling, firstly, especially as a niche genre player, which I am, not a pop musician. So to have that engagement is very encouraging. So everything I'm constructing is leading up to that point and that release. So it again goes back to the dark and the light, really creating tension. We do it a lot with the trio. It's one of our sort of tropes, I think. We really create a lot of tension. And then it's up to me as the leader to know when to release that tension. You know, and that's really my challenge when I'm concertizing, you know. And you've experienced it, I know, Leon's experienced it. You really make things, it really gets edgy. And then it's really about that breath after that, you know. And after that breath, now we don't want to be we want to go back to, you know. So it's like keeping it interesting, like any conversation, any relationship you might have, you know, you got to keep it spicy. So,
That makes sense.
yeah. Okay. Thank you. I just have a question. Some people are coming tomorrow as well. Okay. And most not. No, this is not a trick question. Okay, I think I'll play a little bit. It's very difficult to play after talking so much. But for the purposes of the structure, I will just play short pieces to end. Actually, maybe I'll just play some pieces that I like to play. Okay. Thank you. Again, thank you so much for listening. Here comes our melody. A flat. E. F sharp. C. G. E flat. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.